If you want to have a very smooth shift, there are particular things you need to ask. There are particular things you need to get when you're receiving your shift report from the off-going nurse. Now I'm going to be reading this report, how the nurse is going to give me, and I want you all to pay attention to the certain questions I'm going to ask as pertaining to this patient. Stephanie, are you ready for report? Okay, so this is Mary Paul. She's a 50-year-old female. She's full coach. She's fully oriented. She came in with GI bleed and acute anemia. She has allergy to codeine and ibuprofen. The only history the patient has is GI bleed. Patient went for a colonoscopy yesterday and they could not find the source of the bleeding, but the patient is still actively bleeding. Patient has an IV to the right forearm, 20 gauge. It has octreotide which is currently running. The patient's skin is clean, dry and intact. The patient is very independent. The patient doesn't have any blood thinners because the patient is having those bleeds. The patient is on room air. Like I said, the patient is independent and so the patient goes to the restroom. The patient has had 2 bowel movements today and they've been really dark brown. The patient is on clear liquid diet. The patient doesn't have PTOT ordered. The patient doesn't have any edema, no cough. The patient doesn't have any orders for incentive spirometers. The patient is not on any fluid restriction. The patient doesn't verbalize any pain. The labs are currently okay, but their hemoglobin is trending down low. The last one was 7.3. And so far on this hospital stay, the patient has had 1 packed red blood cells that was administered to the patient. Aside from the H&H, every other lab is fine. Vital signs, blood pressures are fine, heart rate, sinus reading, respirations are okay. The patient is room air, oxygens are fine. So far the plan is for us to monitor the patient's H&H, to monitor for any signs of bleeding, and maybe to monitor for any signs of pain if anything of that sort comes up. Do you have any questions, Stephanie? So just monitor just the H&H and then maybe colonoscopy as outpatient. Okay, fine. Thank you. I want you all to notice why the patient came to the hospital. This patient is here for a GI bleed. If the patient is on a GI bleed, one thing you should be looking out for is definitely you'll be monitoring the patient's H&H. You'll be monitoring whether the patient is going to be getting blood. You will also be monitoring the patient's blood pressure, because guess what, when the H&H drops, sometimes the blood pressure also drops. You also want to find out, like, hey, is the patient on any pain medicines? Is this like a history or is this something new? Sometimes you also want to know, is the patient on oxygen, because if hemoglobins are low, sometimes the oxygen tends to be on the low end as well. In relation to what a patient comes to the hospital, you want to know exactly the questions to ask. If the nurse is telling you this patient is here for a GI bleed, but they don't mention anything about their labs, you want to make sure you're asking for their hemoglobin. You want to also ask if the patient has received any blood, how many, and how close we should be monitoring this hemoglobin. You also want to ask if this patient is on a Q6 hemoglobin lab collection. You also want to know, like, hey, hopefully the patient is not going to be on any blood thinners, but if this patient is, in this case, this patient is independent, so they might not even need an SCDs, but sometimes it's always advisable to always put on those SCDs on patients. Another thing you also want to look out for, hey, is the patient on protonics? Is the patient on octreotide, like I mentioned, for which this patient is on octreotide? You also want to monitor certain things very closely. Vital signs, again, like I said, you want to know what the patient's diet is. Most of the times, patients who come with GI bleeds are going to be on a clear liquid diet. So you want to be on the lookout for, hey, if the patient is regular diet, like that doesn't sound right. If the patient is on full liquid diet, is it that the patient was advanced from clear liquid to full liquid, and for how long have they been on full liquid, and how long do they plan to keep them full liquid before advancing them to a regular diet? So those are the certain things that you want to be cognizant if the patient comes in with a GI bleed. Like I mentioned, you want to be monitoring their H&H, you want to be monitoring their blood pressures, and you want to keep a close eye as to, hey, has lab collected their Q6 H&H labs collection. So those are the things that are going to set you up for a successful, smooth sailing shift. If you know what your patient is there for and you know what to look out for this patient. I hope that this video was very helpful. If you have any other question, give me maybe settings of patients who come to the hospital for certain diagnoses, and I can give you a report and make sure that I highlight certain things to ask when you're getting a report on the setting of that patient or on the diagnosis of that patient. Patients are going to obviously come to the hospital with several diagnoses. So if you're struggling with a particular diagnosis and what to look out for and what to ask during your shift report or when you're getting a shift report, I want you to drop the comment in the comment section, and I'm going to be very sure to make a video on that and teach you all what to expect and what to ask from the nurse who is giving you report. From me to you, I want to say thank you. Do not forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next one. Bye guys, and stay safe.